Hey, it's Romania Black. And yeah, so I couldn't wait. I watched episode 13 a few days ago, and I couldn't wait. I was like, no, I want to see what is going to go down in episode 14. So I don't have any new comments. I recently had a minor procedure done, and in that procedure I had to take some antibiotics afterwards, and as it turns out, I'm allergic to that antibiotic. Good time to find out. So my face is a little swollen. It itches. My entire body is like covered in hives and I itch all over. So this is a nice distraction from that. So I don't worry about scratching myself to death by watching Vinland Saga. So there's that. So if I look a little off, that is why. But I'm really excited. So we found out Askeladd hates the Danes, but he's been working with them for 40 years, trying to set up something. It seems like Canute is his saving grace. He's like, I can mold this kid and get him to help us. And so I don't know. I'm very excited to see what's going to happen, but I'm very curious. So I don't know exactly. Bjorn seems like he is suspicious. He's suspicious of Askeladd and thinks something's up, but he doesn't want to believe it. He wants to believe that there's no way that Askeladd's going to betray us. No way he's leading us into this mountainous area without any weapons, and we've been weakened and in the snow, and he could just run off with Canute at the last minute. Nah, surely not. So I don't know. But I'm really, really excited because, and then meanwhile, Thorfinn and Canute begin the most unlikely of friendships, and it soothes my heart. I absolutely love it. So I have no clue what to expect. Ragnar, I believe Askeladd, and they were going to try to get Ragnar out of the picture. They're going to try to nix Ragnar because he is the one keeping Canute in the nest. And like Gritanius said, he needs to leave the nest. So if Mother Bird won't kick him out, then the hunters might have to get rid of Mother Bird. So I don't know, but this is all getting very interesting. Askeladd's whole backstory is very, very interesting as well. And I'm super curious to see what all is going to go down in this episode because they're on their way to Gainsborough. Now the question is, are we going to make it to Gainsborough? Are we going to run into Thorkel? What's going to happen? Because Thorkel's trying to find and catch up to him and they're going the long way around. So I just don't know. But we shall see, right? We'll find out. So let's not waste any more time, shall we? We are going to start episode 14 of Vinland Saga and just see what happens. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. What a weird episode. Strange episode. I don't know how to feel about it. I feel like I was expecting it to go a lot differently than that. I thought, coming off of, we focus on this girl, Anne, who I think she manages to escape, and she's still alive by the end of this. So I feel like she's going to have a part to play in this story. But what that part will be, I don't know yet. But what a very strange episode. I was like, huh. So I mean, it was really introspective and, again, showing the lengths in which Askeladd will go to prove to his men to earn their trust, right? So, interesting. I didn't want to bring Whiteboard Coon out for this one because I think I don't know how much of it really is needed for Whiteboard Coon, but I do want to go through this episode because it's so odd. So, okay. So whenever we start getting like the snowy dunes and everything, I instantly think we're about to go to the OP, but no, I forget the OP in this one is like a boat on a clear river. I thought for a second we were going to go back to Askeladd's mom because we saw her dancing in the snow, and for a second I wondered if Anne was Askeladd's mom, but she's a redhead and Askeladd's mom is blonde, so that's not it. So I was like, who is she? So, no spoilers, obviously, but we cut to this like the blinding winter in the northern mountains, and we see the axe with the blood coming off it, which now we know that the axe with the blood coming off of it is from when they killed the village. They killed the entire village and took their food, right? So that's what it's from. And so then the lines are, why do you continue to forget us? Why have you abandoned us for so long? meaning like God has forgotten them and has abandoned them, and these bad things are happening because he's not there. I don't know. Interesting. And then she prays, she says, God, do we really have to be pure? Because she's sinned, she's stolen something. She coveted something. And she's like, do we have to be pure? And God, their fingernails are all cracked. Their fingernails are cracked and their hands are like not frostbit, but then in that pre-frostbit stage it's why I hate winter. Like once I go outside, your hands start to get like all red and stuff. Like that just made me hurt looking at her hands. I'm like, ugh, nope. But she has the ring. Really? My father said those who do not follow your commands shall be punished. Even if they're an angel. As she falls, even if they're an angel. Ooh. That no matter how good they are, if they don't follow his commands, they'll be punished. Interesting indeed, right? Oh man. Okay, so the idea of what exactly counts as being punished, the living is easy, dying is easy, living is harder sort of thing. I mean, the thing of getting left behind, all of that fun stuff. Oh man. Okay. Interesting. No matter how good you are, if you don't follow him, she says, a person like me could never understand your will. She's like, I'm never going to be good enough to get to that point. I don't understand it. She's like, I'm not capable of understanding your teachings. She's like, so I just can't follow you. But I feel that your kingdom in heaven is very far away. And Anne, help me get dinner ready. Yeah, so it's very far away. And then she puts the ring back because she's not supposed to have it. I thought for a while that the ring she had was from like a fiance or a lover, or someone had gave her that ring to tell her that they were going to ask her to run away with them or something like that. And she was just hiding it because she didn't want to tell her family. No, she stole it. But she puts it back in the tree, right? When she went back to that tree, I was like, that's when they're going to attack, when she's away from the house. She's like, I felt burdened to know that you sit in heaven and watch us. She's like, you seem so far away and you watch for so far away. It feels like I'm burdened by that. Like I can't see you, but I know that you're there. Interesting. So yeah, so we go past this OP here. And I find it funny that the OP, a lot of it takes place in the snow as they're trudging through the snow. So it's like we're entering winter. And I have a feeling that most of the second half of the season is going to take place in the winter months, right? As they struggle to survive. So we cut back to the priest, right? So we cut back to the priest where it says Jehovah. The light of dawn, which we got at the very end of this. So he's praying to Jesus, Jehovah, restore us to yourself. And he's in the church there, that we may return, renew our days. And then there's all the monks as of old. There's all the monks in the temple there. Interesting. I love they cut to the statue that has its eyes closed. The symbolism. It's great. And he's like, And so then the priest cuts back. He's like, it's like this, Mr. Priest. And he's like, that's it. So it's like me and my brother. So what he's trying to do is tell him the story of Judas, right, that betrayed him. And he's like, we've been together since we were kids. So these two may not actually be biological brothers, Willibald and the other one. They may not be legit brothers. They just may be like childhood friends that grew up together and they're kind of like brothers because of that. But like on the battlefield, they're brothers. Yeah. And he's like, we can read each other's minds. And he's just like drinking. The priest is like, don't care. I'd never trade our relationship for silver, right, brother? They're just mocking him in the story of Judas betraying Jesus. And he's like, of course not, brother. It depends on how much. I'm like, you guys are the worst. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And then they do this post in the OP. It's a bond of brotherhood. What do you think? Like, oh, did we get it right? Oh my God. And the priest is like, I hate all of you. No, the priest is just like, you guys are weird. I'll get a picture of that. He's like, who knows? He's nice. He's like, I'm a priest. I'm not gonna be, he's like, who knows? And they're like, oh, come on. Like, it's completely different from what I imagine love to be. Yeah, so it's interesting. This priest is trying to get through the concept of love and what he considers to be love. Because I mean, you could argue that what Willibald and the other Viking are demonstrating is a form of love. It's brotherhood. It's that camaraderie. It's a form of love. But it's not what the priest is thinking about. It's not what the priest defines it as, which is interesting. And they're like, now you listen here. They're like, you've never been on the battlefield, so you don't know. You don't understand how amazing that bond is. A union formed in a moment of life or death. They're like, that bond that we have on the battlefield when we're facing life and death together, you can't replicate that. And it's like, he's like making this grand theatrical performance. You'd never be able to do it yourself. And he's like, I think it's wonderful. It must be something very valuable to you two brothers. Well then, if we enter the battlefield, would you have my back? He's like, this bond that you have, would you use it to protect me? And Willibald's like, what? No! We're not protecting you. I can do it because he's my brother, but I can't trust my back to a drunk priest. Ah! He's like, oh, is that right? That's why it's not the same. And so the guy's like, well, can you explain it in a way that I understand it? So was he talking in English in that moment instead of Danish? Yeah, because he's like, oh, it's not the same. He's like, well, what do you mean? Explain, priest. How is my love not different from what you're expecting? He's like, what about you? You really like booze, so maybe that's love. So they've talked about the concept of love, right? And they've tied love to Christianity. So they talked a few episodes back about how love was something, he's like, well, love is something you give value to, and it's beyond that value. And so they've been trying to define love and what it means. And I feel like the priest is trying to teach them a kind of love that, you know, Jesus provides in the Christian faith, and they just don't quite get it. They're like, well, is it like a brotherhood? Because we've got that. And he's like, no, it's not like that. And then this one Viking's like, well, is it like you enjoying booze? Is that your love? Is that what you're talking about? And he's like, no. He says, it's not that I love booze. And they're like, what? And so they're like, then stop drinking. So that's curious. But okay, so the priest not liking the booze or not loving booze, but it's a vice, right? It's a sin. Okay, so maybe that's tying to the daughter. Maybe it's tying to that. Maybe it's tying to the ring that she coveted. He's like, it's not, because her whole thing at the very end of this was she was spared, but she did something bad. So was her being spared a bad thing? Is she being left on earth to make up for everything and to like repent for her sins? And maybe that's the priest thing. Maybe the priest wasn't serious about the priesthood, and so he's been stuck behind. Maybe his monastery was killed and he was the only one left, and he's just trying to repent. And maybe the booze is a reminder of something. I don't know. He's like, I'm sorry. And they're like, this guy doesn't make any sense. You think you like things that don't make sense, right? Well, how about this? And then they say the veterans still talk about it even today. So yeah, so that they say, so these guys weren't around when they fought Thor's, which was 11 years ago. The veterans, which is interesting because when they talk about the veterans, that's only been 11 years, which granted, I'm assuming that the Viking trade does not come with a extended lifetime warranty. The Viking trade is pretty, you're not gonna live a long time pillaging and plundering. So for them, veterans are guys that have lived 11 years. Like Askeladd's like a legend to them because of how long he's lived. But yeah, that's interesting. And so they say, you know, they talked about it when we attacked a ship in the Faroes. And so they're like, well, you're talking about stuff that doesn't make sense. What about this? We met this guy and battled with him, right? And said there was a warrior on that ship, one warrior. He had incredible strength. And they talk about him, how we attacked him together. And even then, he beat 30 of our men with his bare hands. His bare hands! And in the end, we killed him. It's like Jesus. That's what the priest is aligning him to. He's like, but when the time came to count our losses, we found that no one had died. I wonder, he was carrying a sword, right? And he's like, maybe he thought we were no match for him. And when they turn, he's like, if so, it angers me. Where are his manners as a warrior? And the priest is like, tell me more about this man. Because Thor's is like a literal Jesus analogy here. He's like, he fought these men. He died, died on the cross. He died for them. And none of them were killed. He killed none of them. But it's like, oh, the priest is like, I can latch on to this. He's like, tell me more. And so he's like, did he do anything else? And what is his name? And the guy's like, I don't know his name. He's like, I don't remember. He said, I guess weirdos are drawn to each other. But then Willibald says, the guy said some strange things too. A true warrior doesn't need a sword. And that's funny that after 11 years, that story has circulated and it's come back over and over again. A true warrior doesn't need a sword. Something like that. And the priest is like, oh my God, I can use this. He's like, yeah, because the priest trying to connect to these Vikings, he's like, well, how do I explain it? He's like, how do I explain the teachings of Jesus to y'all when you don't understand what love is? He's like, how do I explain this to y'all? You guys are all obsessed with battling and being warriors. And so then the story of Thor's kind of becomes something, he's like, I can use this. He's like, the whole thing about Jesus, it doesn't, a warrior, a man who lives by the sword dies by the sword. He's like, a true warrior doesn't need a sword. He's like, no, that's it. He's like, that's what I've been looking for, a way to connect to y'all. That's perfect. He's like, oh. Also, want to make note, his voice was a lot deeper in this episode, and I know that he is Moran from Warrior the Patriot, and he's Dai Chi's from Haikyuu's voice actor. His voice acting sounded very much like Moran in this episode. It was a lot deeper than I think it has been in previous episodes, or maybe I just forgot, but he's just like, and he just like scuttles back to his spot, and they're like, priest, hey, where are you going? What are you doing? They're like, what is up with him? And they're like, what is it, priest? Did we get it right? Was that love? And him just looking into the fires. Like, is that what love is? And he's like, I love him just staring into the embers. It's great. Like trying to mull it over and think of a way to tell it. A warrior, a true, doesn't need a sword. And we got a close up on the mouths of characters in this episode. We got a close up on the priest's mouth, and then we got a close up on Anne's mouth at the end. And in both scenarios, they were talking about God and talking about relating the idea of something that was true, like a true warrior, and she talks about the true nature of the situation. A true warrior. Yep. Interesting. He's just still mulling it over. So meanwhile, we join Askeladd in our journey to see what all's going down. We join Askeladd in our journeys, and things aren't looking great. I like the old Canute. We get like one shot of Thorfinn throughout this entire episode, and it's of him and Canute looking worse for wear. Worst first date ever. Our chaperones took us out to this mountainside covered in snow. 0 out of 10 would not recommend. God, it's great. It's great. It's like, oh man. So yeah, so it's freezing cold, and they're in the snow, and they're trying to push all of these goods up the mountainside. And Askeladd's like, just don't complain about the weather. And Ragnar's like, I'm a sailor. The weather on top of a hill is not my area of expertise. I like that Ragnar's like, you're so full of shit. Ragnar's like, I don't believe you. He's like, you knew exactly what we were getting into. So yeah, he's like, how was I supposed to know? No one could have predicted it was going to snow this much. And Ragnar's like, I did. In the last episode, I said it was a bad idea. Nobody listened. He's like, thanks. I like that Ragnar's like, I predicted this was going to happen. Thank you very much. He's like, that's not what I'm trying to say. He says, I'm trying to say that luck is no longer on your side. We've changed our route to beat the winter snows, and now we ended up like this. The soldiers are also worried. He says, yeah. He's like, well, my men have been to hell and back. They'll be fine. This is nothing. And Ragnar's like, it's nothing. And as he says, they're following orders, no hesitation. See? And as he says that, a soldier like crumples into the snow. And Ragnar's like, yeah, no. He's like, we need to turn back. It's going to be crazy to try to cross Mercia. He's like, we need to go back, and you know it. He's like, if we're going to walk through the snow, we'll have to leave our plunder behind. My men aren't going to like that. Either way, we can't camp out in the open tonight. And then the light shining, and he's like, Askeladd, we're ready. So they scouted out the village, we can go. He's like, all right. He's like, Askeladd, when luck's not on your side, no matter what you do, it's going to backfire. And he says, Ragnar, what are you hesitating for? That smile! What is it? Look at this ridiculous smile. He's like smiling in the snow. What a troll. Attacking and plundering villages is a tradition for us Norsemen. So Ragnar's like, okay. Ragnar's like, we need to go back. This is stupid. We're not going to make it to Mercia. We're all going to die out in this tundra. Just suck up your pride. Admit it was a bad idea to go in the mountains, and let's go back. And Askeladd's like, no. He's like, if we try to go back up the mountain or down the mountain, we're going to have to leave some of the plunder behind, and my men won't like that. So he's like, we just need to camp out in a village tonight and sort things out and get ready to go tomorrow. He's like, it just so happens there's a nice village right here, and our men are really good at plundering, and they haven't been able to do it lately, so we might as well go in and see what we can find. And so then we get the scene of them all at the table together. Of them all at the table together praying, right? And everybody, it's just like bread and porridge. It's just like really the most meager, simple things. And everybody's hands and nails are all brittle and everything. That we forgive our debtors and lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. And the kids are like, and the kids and everything are like goofing off. The little girl prays with the mom, which is really cute. But the brothers and everything, there's like 7 kids here, which is interesting. And then they hand out all the stuff and the bread and the porridge. And so the little girl asks why they pray. And so this is interesting. It says, because Jesus told us to do so. And Jesus is always right. And he's like, what happens if we don't pray? And he talks about hell and like the devils and everything. But what's interesting about this is that they practice, they pray, and they will seem to believe that there's a heaven and hell. But then whenever the sons bring up the Danes and talk about how they're evil, the dad's like, yes, they are evil. And I'm like, oh, that's not the message at all. I'm like, that's interesting. That it's just, they're like, it doesn't make sense. Everyone's going to be taken to heaven or hell soon. And this is going back to the whole thing. This is going back to the whole thing where they predicted Ragnarok, that in 20 years it's going to be the end of the world. And the mom's like, I don't want our family to get separated. I want us to all be together. Right? And so it's interesting because they talk about how they believe in Jesus, they're praying and everything. But when the kids bring up the idea of the Danes being evil, they're like, oh yeah, they're totally evil. They all need to die. And I'm like, whoa, wait. Like, why did God decide to pass judgment on the world? And he says it's not sudden. It's been predicted for a long, long time that it would happen 1,000 years after the resurrection of Jesus. Okay. In other words, 20 years later, and there's that creepy like devil like eating the guy inside with the flames. It's kind of creepy. It looks almost like a dragon and a goblin. When God passes judgment, all evil men are going to hell. I know. And she's like, I know that. And like, the Danes are the evil men. That's the crazy part here, is when they say the Danes are the evil men. Like, love thy neighbor. That part of the New Testament, they didn't get that copy. They didn't get that copy of it, clearly. But yeah, he's like, I'm sure God knew that people like them would turn up. Make sure you follow God's commandments. And then Anne goes back out to the woods. She's like, I gotta pee! And it's like, it's snowing outside horribly. But she goes back to that ring. And she's convinced that she's going to hell. She's like, I'm so scared of the devil. I don't want to go. It's interesting because in some regards, she's more genuine than the family is. Because the family talks all about these different teachings of Jesus, but then they don't enact the one that's about, loving thy neighbor. They call the Danes evil and, don't offer any sympathy towards them. Whereas she is horrifically concerned about going to heaven or hell. But she's like, I can't help it. I stole this. She's like, will I be forgiven if I take it back? Would God forgive me if I paid for it? Like, how can I right this wrong? And she's like, the devil tempted me to take it. The devil must have tempted me. Must have. It wasn't myself. The devil must have done it. Placing blame on someone else. And just that ring on her withered, nasty hands. She's like, I shouldn't have gone to the market when I don't have any money. She's like, I bet bad children like me will be sent to hell on the day of judgment. So she's not that old. She's probably like Thorfinn's age. Maybe. She says, I bet I'm the only one in my family who's not going to heaven. She's the only one that lives. She's the only one that survives. Yikes. And she tries to throw the ring, but she can't do it. She can't throw it. It's just that temptation. It looks so pretty on my left hand, too. That she loves it. And that's when she sees the guards. They're about to go into the house. So there's an interesting tie-in in all this of vices, and when you know something is wrong, but you keep doing it. There's a big tie-in, and I didn't bring White Raccoon out, but you have Anne, who knows that taking the ring is wrong, but she can't get rid of it. You have Thorfinn, who knows that getting revenge on his parents isn't going to change anything, and he should forget it, but he can't. We have the priest, who says he doesn't love booze, but he drinks it all the time, so there's some kind of connection there. And then you even have Askeladd, who admits he hates the Danes, and he wants them all gone, but he spent the last 40 years following them and enabling them, so what do we do with that? So there's lots of different comparisons of how we know something's wrong, but giving up that temptation is so hard, and it's so near impossible to do. Interesting. And then, of course, as soon as the kids are having a fun time and making silly faces, I was like, this is not going to end well. No, they're not going to come in there just to say hi and can we use your house for the night? No, that's not how these guys work. It's not how these guys work at all. He says, if you're not good, God's going to punish you. And then lo and behold, he's like, hey. Bjorn's like, I found dinner. God, Bjorn. And then we have this line, but thou hast utterly rejected us. Thou art very wroth against us. That you were cast aside and judged. And the priest is like, this village, they're Christians. They're like, they're civilians. He's like, everyone run away. And he just gets the snot kicked out of him. He's like, the village is under attack. And Askeladd's like, look, priest, if any of these people get out and tell the enemy where we are, it's ruined. It's over. He's like, the only advantage we have right now is the element of surprise. That is it. If you tell them, if anybody escapes and tells on us, it's over. Which Anne got away, so is she going to run into Thorkel and them and tell them? I don't know. There's guys there that can speak English, I'm sure, because they followed Thorkel. They'll understand what she's saying. Oh my gosh, but her hiding behind the tree. And it's like, what do I do? And then Bjorn, like the sound design in this episode, the use of silence, of just the winter winds howling, like that's it, that's all we get. Like just the use of sound was so good in this episode. It was like, oh my gosh, it was great. I was like, oh, it was just really, really well done. Very well done. I was like, oh my gosh, this was just wonderful. But yeah. So he's like, it's warm in here. I feel alive again. What's with his family? There's so many kids. Yeah, there's like 7 of them. He's like, what do you want all of a sudden? And he's like, it's milk porridge with barley and a bit of jerky, and it has onions in it. And he's like, get everything that can be used as a weapon. Like they just pillage the whole, while they're just sitting there, and the mom like holding the daughter like they know, they're like, what can we do? But the whole village just being raided in front of them. Like, it is so quiet. It's not like in the summer raid back in episode 6, it was like loud and brutal and bloody, and here it's so quiet. And it just sneaks in like a whisper, and they just come in there. Oh my gosh. But the mom, that face to her daughter, it's so sad, where she knows exactly where this is going, right? And then he spits out the porridge. You're eating some bad food. And the sad thing is that those people, that's like all the food they had. And Bjorn just throws it down like, this is gross. And that's like their only food. Like, He's like, what's wrong? And she's like, what's wrong with you? Don't waste food. And he's like, you're going to be punished. And he just smacked her against Bjorn just backhanded that mom against the shelf and knocked her out. Oh, it's like a nice reminder of, oh yeah, these are not nice people we've been following the last 11 years of this show. These are not nice people. And Bjorn does not seem to take, like, that look on Bjorn's face, that's a great shot of him. He does not seem to take pleasure in any of this. He's just like, how do you say it in English again? Give me all your food. Yes, that's right. He's like, old man. And him just pointing the knife, right as his eye. I'm like, why did you do that? I didn't want to see it. He says, give me all your food. I'll kill you. So they gather up all the chickens, all the bags of food, everything. There's different barrels and everything. And there's some plates. And there's some different jugs and stuff. And bags of food and everything. Some chickens. And Askeladd and Bjorn serving it all. Askeladd does not look pleased. He's like, ugh. What does he say here? He says... He's like, is that all? It's like, put it there. And he just, if we count 2 kids as 1 adult, that makes 50 people. 50 people total in this village. That means there's only enough food for 50 to last the winter. And they're all outside waiting, just sitting there. It won't be enough for 104 soldiers. And then Anne's back there looking. She's like, what am I going to do? They captured everyone. What am I going to do? And Askeladd, here's the problem. Askeladd realized, looking at all the food, he probably thought they were much more stocked than that they had more supplies. And so when he actually got out there and saw that they did not, and he was like, oh, these people are barely staying alive. They have just enough to feed themselves through winter, and that's it. They don't have enough. He's like, I have double the amount of men that this village has, and this village is not going to keep us satisfied for long. So we can make shop here for a little while, but not for long. And then we'll have to move on to the next village because we just can't afford to do anything different. And him walking out of the warm, like out of the flames of hell into the wind, into the cold winter winds. He's like, priest. And they just beat him to a pulp and tied him to a tree. You're the prince's teacher. That makes you our guest. God, Askeladd looks so good there in the winter winds. Like the winter wind's whipping through his hair. He looks glorious. Oh, he's terrifying in this scene. He's like, I'll forgive you just once, but if you get in our way again, I'm going to kill you on the spot. I hate priests, to be honest. I wonder why. I wonder why Askeladd hates priests. That's interesting because he seems to have like a spiritual side to him because he believes this whole legend of Arthur and stuff, but it's interesting that he says he hates priests as well. That's curious. He says, and then the dad says, are you guys Danes? Do any of you speak our language? Askeladd does. Yeah, that side eye where Askeladd just looks over that side eye. Askeladd speaks their language. He knows what they're saying. And he just has hand on the sword. And then the dad comes up and says, I beg you, leave us half of the food. Leave us half of the food. If we have half, we can make it through winter. He's like, I have a baby, please. And I love that Askeladd's like, oh wow, a baby? That's rough. That's rough, buddy. I love that Askeladd's like, gee, that was a life decision. I feel like Askeladd's that person that's like, when somebody's like, I have a child, he's like, well, that was your choice. Like, just, God, Askeladd. He's like, yes, and? He's like, what about it? What about you having this baby? He's like, that's rough. Shouldn't have done that. And the man, when he realizes, I'm sure that he said that in English, so when he realizes that that's what he said, he's like, oh. He's like, don't worry, I made sure to think about you. This is the cruelest thing. Askeladd, oh. Where he's like, oh, I thought about you all. He's like, you don't have to worry about making it through winter. And the moment he said that, I was like, he's like, oh, really? He's like, oh, yeah, you're not going to make it through. He's like, it's true. God, that face. That face is like, it is, talk about Judas. He's like, you don't need to worry about making it through this winter or any winters to come. And he has the axe. He's like, I'm going to release you from your suffering. Huh. And then he's like, and the priest, well, Ragnar, and then they're like, they're civilians, Askeladd. They're not military. Like, are we really going to do this? And he's like, if I let them live, I don't have any food to feed them. He's like, I can't let them live while also feeding my soldiers. He's like, that's not going to work. And then he's like, and even if one of them escapes, they're going to tell the enemy that we're here. We can't allow that to happen. So, and then, so yeah, he's like, I've already done the math. He's like, I can't feed my soldiers and their people. Not going to happen. He's like, and if we let any of them go, they're going to tell where we are and it will ruin the plan. So he's like, I've been left with little to no choice. And so he's like, when he says, were you able to dig the hole? And they're like, we can fit 62 if we cram them in. It's just going to be a mass grave. And then Ragnar's like, they're Christians. And Askeladd's like, and? He's like, so what? This is what's best for the prince. Oh, and Thorfinn doesn't care. Thorfinn's just like, whatevs. But Canute's just like just letting, like, what can Canute say at this point, right? What can he say? But it's funny, some people were talking about Thorfinn and how Thorfinn was kind of a hard character to get on board with as protagonist. At this point, Askeladd is the protagonist. He's the main character. He may not be a hero. He may be villainous, but he's the protagonist at this point. I'm like, Askeladd is the one that this story is about. I'm convinced. We're just, Thorfinn's our other character, our co-character. And he's like, all right, any more questions? And then it's interesting that he's looking away when he says kill them. He's not looking at them at all. He's like looking up at the sky when he says kill them. Like he's not, Askeladd's not fully into it, but he knows what has to be done to get Canute. And that's what he said. He said, this is what's best for the prince, right? Not what's best for his men, not what's best for him or the other soldiers. No, what's best for Canute. Canute has to make it to Gainsborough, so whatever he has to do to get Canute there, he will do. Even if it means, like, because he knows at this point he can't make it alone. He needs his men with him. And so he's like, whatever keeps us going at this point, I'm going to do. And that includes massacring this village. But yeah, when he just gives the order looking away, kill them. And then we have the axe coming down. And then, yeah. It's just the sound of silence and the winter winds and all of it. It's crazy, right? Crazy. And then Anne gets away. Anne leaves. And she's just in despair. And what's funny is I thought her leaving the tracks behind, if she met up to Thorkel or any of them, that she would be able to show them the tracks and be like, look, this is where I came from. Now, granted, if it snows over the top of it, that'll be kind of superfluous. But I thought that maybe she was leaving a trail and somebody was going to follow her and find it. I don't know if Askeladd and Canute and them are going to try to chase after Anne to keep her from telling the enemy that they're there, or if she's going to meet up with Thorkel or any of them before that. I don't know. But she sees the moon in the clouds. And she stands there at the top of the hill looking at it. and how beautiful it is. And then she's just filled with this instant despair at that moment after looking at the moon. And I love this monologue. It's so eerie. Where she says, God. She says, are you watching? And we get the close-up of the mouth again like we did with the priest. I thought she was going to bite her lip until it bled in that scene, and she didn't do it. And she said, did my father, my mother, my grandfather, my brothers, and my sisters, did they arrive over there? And no answer. And she just kind of sighs at that. She sighs at that, and then her looking up, you aren't going to call me there too, right? Being like, are you leaving me behind for a reason? Right? Oh man. I want to get a picture of her like that. But yeah, it's almost like she's like, are you going to, was this for a reason that I was left behind? And that sky's so beautiful. It's great. She's like, because I feel elated now. Because she's not bound by any of those rules. She's like, I can't believe such evil people exist. As they're like burying all the bodies. I can't believe. Oh, that shot of Askeladd against the mass grave being dug and the guys in the hoods and then Bjorn's behind him. That's a great shot. Oh my God. That there are people who aren't afraid of your punishment. Yeah. And she folds her arms. Just like the moment I stole this ring. As she's crying, I feel elated. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. That look. So yeah, that's interesting that she's like, there are people who aren't afraid of your punishment. People who are evil. And she's like, they're left behind. And so am I. So am I the same as them? Anne. She's like, I feel elated now. And then she just kind of collapses. But then the dawn breaks. And we get just like it all going over the trees and the snow and everything. And receding. And then she wakes up in the snow and is still alive. And that's it. And that's it! That's the episode! What? What a weird episode. I mean, it was very low key and down to earth and quiet, but it was like a setup episode, but we got introduced to Anne, who's not dead yet, and I'm so fascinated. It definitely was a setup episode, and it is building on Askeladd's character just a wee bit, right? Because it's building on Askeladd's character and establishing that, Askeladd's character he's been doing this gig for 40 years. He knows how to play the game. He knows how to appease to his men. He's like, fine, we'll go pillage and plunder this village, as we do. But it's also to get their morale boosted a little bit and to kind of save face in the fact that, yeah, this storm is not good. But yeah, Ragnar bringing up the point that he's no longer lucky and no longer has good luck. I'm like, I think Askeladd is still doing all right for himself. I think he's still fine. I just think that, yeah, his troops clearly are going to be fed up with him unless he does something drastic. So they need to get to Gainsborough as quick as possible. In order to do that, they need to stock up on supplies and trudge forward and just, move when they can. So curious. I'm wondering how far away from Gainsborough they really are, where we're at this point in the story. But, oh my gosh, I just... this was an interesting episode. It's definitely not one of my favorites, but it's a weird episode. I feel like it's setting up something. I feel like it's an important episode for reasons that won't get revealed until later on in this part of the season. But that's what has me excited is that, okay, what are we going to reveal based on this episode, what are we going to carry from this episode to the rest of the season? That's going to be the interesting part. So we shall see, right? But yeah, I'm curious to know your thoughts down below. Please no spoilers, no hints or clues, or don't be like, well, you'll find out and don't say that. No. But I am curious, without telling me about anything that could happen in the future of the plot based on this, I'm curious to know your thoughts just about the episode in general. It feels like a weaker episode, but at the same time, it feels like it's important in setting something up. So, I don't know, but, So yeah, that's all I got for this episode, y'all. Hopefully when I see episode 13 and episode 12 are about to come out on Patreon and YouTube, if I get any comments from those I want to bring up, I will bring them up in the next episode. But yeah, I guess we'll see what's going to happen with old Anne. Knowing Arlek, we'll never see her again the rest of the season. She's just disappeared out of sight. We won't see her till like the second to last episode. Maybe. But we'll see, right? So in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back very soon with more Vinland Saga. Bye.